Welcome to the Lead Pedal Podcast with your host, Bruce Outridge, where he talks all things trucking. Now let's get rolling.
Hey, how's everybody doing today? Welcome to another edition of the Lead Pedal Podcast. Today we're going to be sharing some information, a bit of a recap from the Canadian Transportation Summit. Had some great discussions going on there for sure. This is put on by Transrep and PMTC. If you don't know about Transrep, they help companies bring their services or products to market. They help with executive job placement, all that kind of stuff. So if you're just looking for somebody who knows the industry like the back of their hand, but probably better than the back of their hand, then you certainly want to check out Transrep. You can go to transrep.ca, and by the way, they're having their summit April of 2026, so you want to make sure you get to that. If you're a recruiter, you need to be in that room. Our friends over at PMTC, we talk a lot about them here, of course. There's the Private Motor Truck Council. Mike Million, you guys all know Mike if you're in this area at all. And we've been working with them. So the two of them, they handle all their association for the private fleets, Giant Tiger, Tim Hortons, Home Hardware, all those kind of fleets that have stores, whatever. So check them out, pmtc.ca. Make sure you check out their conference. They have one in June every year, and I've got to say that these two people put on some of the best conferences I've ever been at, and I just love the one in PMTC. So go to pmtc.ca to learn about that. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the conference here, but before we get to that, I got to say, Bison Transport's one of the safest fleets going, and the reason is they've got the Right to Decide program, which is just wonderful for a driver. You get the choice to decide when you need to pull over, whether that's be weather related or you're not feeling well or some other issue, or maybe you're just having a stressful day and you need to take a break. They understand. That's why their drivers are making their safety bonuses, because they get the right to decide when to travel and when not to travel. And that's why they win safety awards year after year. So check them out at bisondriving.com for all the opportunities there. All right, let's talk about the Canadian Transportation Summit. This was a great event. It's always a great event put on by PMTC and by Transrep. They do this every year. They move it around to different locations. This year, it was at Canadian Tire's, I'm going to say head office. I don't know if that's their head office, but it was really cool. Now, I had never been in this one before. If you guys know, if you're here in Ontario, Canada, or probably anywhere in Canada, Canadian Tire stores are, a brand that's been around since the beginning of time, and every Canadian, they're next to Tim Hortons coffee. Let's just say the two of them go together type thing. So Canadian Tire has been around for a while. They're part of the private fleet, Private Motor Truck Council Association, and they've got from a truck driver standpoint, they haven't had the best name in the industry. I used to deliver to their distribution center in Brampton, and it was known for you could spend a whole day waiting in line. Now, I haven't done that for a long, long time, so hopefully it's gotten better, because we're talking like 30, 40 years ago. But that was the name, other than the stores, that was the name associated with trucking. I got to say, folks, since they've been part of PMTC, I've learned a little bit about them. I didn't see their distribution center at this location, but I can tell you that everybody was very accommodating and cordial, and the place was great. What I like the best of it is when you go in the front door, there's a case of collector trucks, some of their old stuff, which I thought was very cool. And on another wall was someone had done it, and I don't remember the artist, but they had done this whole cartoon history of Canadian Tire, and I thought that was really cool. Being an artist myself, I thought that was, I was looking at that. I was going to take a picture, and I was it was 6:30 in the morning. Security didn't really know who I was. I thought, I better not end up in jail. Is there a Canadian Tire jail? I don't know. It's probably filled with Canadian Tire money. Anyway, we had a good time at the Canadian Transportation Summit. Back on track, Bruce. Like, come on. Anyway, so we had a really good time at this event. So this event was a morning event, and it was brought by a number of people. PMTC, Transrep, Driver Check was a sponsor, 10th Street was a sponsor, ISB Global was a sponsor, Canadian Tire, of course, was a sponsor. They have their own Tim Hortons. Who has their own Tim Hortons in their building? Anyway, so it consisted of presentation from ISB Global and 10th Street. Both of those do technology platforms. One is more on the recruiting side, one is more on the background check side. They kind of work together a lot of the times. And their focus was on AI. And I don't know how many times I've been at presentations lately for AI. I use it. I know I was afraid of it. Folks, if you want to talk to the converted, just talk to me. I was one of those people who I was afraid of it. Being a creative, I'm going, oh, no, this isn't going to be good. I am using it almost daily now. Now, I'm not using it for anything I can do, so this is not an AI show. This is actually a real person talking to you. But I gotta say, it's pretty cool, some of the stuff it can do. Anyway, they were talking about how to use it for recruiting. Robert Packman, Bob as he's known, is with 10th Street, came up from the States, and he was talking about AI and how it's improving their platform and how it's now being used for recruiting from a driver standpoint. This was really, really important. And then Kevin Carroll was also talking with ISB Global. He was talking about AI from a background. They could have done this as a joint presentation. They were talking about it from a background check and how AI is now able to pull records from so many different places. He talked about how many different million places it can pull from. So he was talking about that. And then they did a technology panel with Gerald Carroll, who's with Westbell, and he's a carrier and a private carrier, and he was talking about he did a technology panel asking them questions about AI and all those kind of stuff and technology in general and how it's playing out in today's world of truck driving. This was very cool. And then they had a driver check, did a little bit of a presentation. Mike and Kim sat down for a discussion, if you will, on kind of the state of the industry. And if you've ever seen Mike Millian, when he talks about the state of the industry, it's not normally a quiet conversation. So they had a little bit of that there. And then, of course, we had the Ministry of Transportation came in and did an overview on CVOR and some of the changes. And this is going to affect everybody. Like you think, oh, the CVOR, I don't care about that. I've got one years ago. Well, you know what? Even if you're a one truck carrier, you have a CVOR. And if you have multiple and you have people work, and now they are using technology to find out exactly how to get to carriers quicker that are having issues. So Sean was talking about how even if you're having incidents and they're not your fault, if you're having a number of the same type of incidents, they're starting to look at your safety program from a defensive driving standpoint and those kind of things. So it was an interesting conversation for sure. And then it rounded out with Leo Barros. You guys know Leo. He's with Today's Trucking. Great columnist. Used to be a truck driver. Used to be a lawyer, and now he is a speaker, I guess, because this is the second time I've seen Leo speak about diversity. And he was talking about inclusion and living in a world of immigrants and what diversity is and how we can start working together and that kind of thing. And I think that's very important. So it's good to see him doing that. So I'm going to share with you some of the stuff going on. Here's some of the presentations, short clips, so you can get an idea of what's going on there.
By far my favorite station.
You're the best.
Oh yeah, I love you guys.
The same thing. You have 5 fleets in Canada in 5 different jurisdictions. There is no system that feeds that into one report. You have to run the score from each different jurisdiction that they're in. So that's one issue. We don't have a central database that it's going to. Second issue is, even though they have the MOU, they don't follow it. Right? If you pull the CVOR, is what we call the National Safety Code System in Ontario, you'll get a score. It says you've used up 25% of your 100% that you're allowed. You run the fleet from Alberta, you'll get an R factor rating of 0.07463. The hell does that mean, and how do I compare the two? So, and it's like that right across the country. So that's the issue. Some do percentage, some do R factors. The other issue is we don't all audit the same. They audit different ways, they apply points different ways. So it leads to a few issues. One, if you're a shipper or even an insurer, how am I supposed to know how many fleets you have? If you're a shipper and only want to put your stuff on a good fleet, well, if I have 5 different provincial safety ratings, do you think I'm going to tell you about the ones that have bad ratings? I'm only going to tell you about the one that has a good rating. And how you're going to do the research and find out that they have them across the country is a bit of an issue. And then we have an issue where they get shut down in one province, and then they just open up in another province or transfer their fleet over to another province. So there's a few things that are going on to try and fix it. CCMTA had meetings back in September. We also had meetings with Transport Canada in July. Jurisdictions are trying to get together to bring more commonality to the memorandums of understanding and more data sharing between the provinces. I will say this is probably the most conversations we've ever had between federal and provincial governments about making changes and becoming more common. Because of the threat down south, I think we've understood that there's a lot of internal barriers that we need to fix ourselves to make us more resilient within our own country. So it has shone a spotlight on that. So we had a very good meeting in September with them. The provinces, territories have all done a jurisdictional scan, looked at the data, said they're going to become more common, to which I say that's a start. It better not be the finish. And we made that voice loud and clear when we were at the meetings in September. We have to get to the point where we have to feed if you're a federally regulated fleet, there should be one system and one score. It should all be fed into a database. Anything short of that is not good enough. 100% is not good enough. And we made that clear because the message they come out with is, we've reviewed this, we're going to make changes, we're going to become more common, but jurisdictional autonomy is still important. Can't be. If you want to have jurisdictional autonomy for provincially regulated carriers, be my guest. For a federally regulated carrier, there should not be any jurisdictional autonomy. The fleet's driving from BC to Nova Scotia to BC. I don't give a crap if they're licensed in BC or licensed in Nova Scotia. There should be no autonomy, it's got to be one system, one score. Anything short of that, we're not going to fix the problems.
Thanks, Mike. We are going to have a Q&A at the end, so any of the questions that you may have, please just hang on to them. We're going to cover a number of different things, but we will give plenty of time for Q&A. And if there's not a lot of Q&A, then we're just going to roll with some more topics because we got a lot of things to talk about. I should say Mike has a lot of things to talk about. And I know this is important. You know, when you take a look at who the Private Motor Truck Council of Canada represents, it's not just private fleets. There's a number of schools who are members of the PMTC. Mike has worked hand in hand with the schools. In Ontario, he was a board member of the Truck Training School Association of Ontario, and is now a board member of the Professional Truck Training Alliance of Canada. And let's go there. Let's go to PMTC joining the Professional Truck Training Alliance of Canada. You were the first association with approval from your board to join. Can you tell the audience why?
Yeah, I think a couple reasons. As Kim knows, the first time Kim and I met, I come off the road as a long-haul truck driver, and I wasn't an instructor then when I first met Kim. I was going to his school to do a 4-week training program to learn how to become an instructor, to learn how to pass the knowledge out of my head onto others, or learn how to forget some of the bad habits and pass the right knowledge on to the drivers. And I was a driver trainer for, 3 years, and then I went into safety and compliance training for our own fleet. Training has always been important to me. It's been a passion of mine. So the reason I got involved with the TTSAO and then PTAC when they became a board is because training is vital. The drivers that are coming out of the training schools are then going to the carriers out on the highway, whether they're private or for hire fleets. So making sure training is being done right, being done properly, so you have the best entry-level student being passed on to a carrier to then do mentorship training is extremely important to me. We were, as you know, and Kim, you were on on the group as well. Ontario is the first jurisdiction to come out with mandatory entry-level training. We can get into how successful it's been, but I do believe mandatory entry-level training was important, and all of us stakeholders in the group at the time did think it was important. Ontario came out with it in 2017. We were part of the group, Kim and I both, along with several other stakeholders that met with the MTO, I'd say twice a month for about a year to set that standard up. So we've been involved with training in the standard right from the beginning, and I think it's important. And the PTAC portion of it that Kim helped found and is an advisor with, they are the only national association that represents truck driving schools. Didn't exist before. And I think that's important because we talked about there's jurisdictional differences, but a lot of drivers in this country go coast to coast or south of the border, and I think it's important that we try to make sure our training standards are as close as possible in different regions of the country as well.
So the CVOR program, for those that, as Mike has indicated, that's our National Safety Code program in Ontario. The CVOR program's been around a long time. For those of you that have been in the industry as long as Mike has, you know the CVOR program started off in a different, with a different vision, different format, and has evolved to what we currently see today. Thank you. So Mike also mentioned carrier safety ratings, and safety ratings are something that we are committed to. And with MTO, we want to see those safety ratings be valuable to the industry, be valuable to the shippers, be valuable to the public, but we also want them to reflect what the carriers actually on-road performance and overall business model. That safety rating is probably the starting point for how we think about, what is a problem for a carrier? What's a risk component for a carrier? Once upon a time, we looked at just very basic metrics. Did they get an inspection? Was it a bad inspection? Did they have a collision? Did they get charged with something? Now we look much more holistically at what the carrier is doing. When did they become a business? How quickly did they grow? Did they go from 1 truck to 50 trucks in 12 months? Because that's where problems start to show up in carriers very quickly. It's not what happened in the past was you'd have 1 truck, 1 operator, he'd be successful or she would be successful and they would build a business. We're now seeing carriers come in starting with 25 or 50 power units, 25 or 50 employees. Well, as Kim will tell you and as Mike will tell you, 50 employees brings a whole host of issues that the carrier, the owner of the company, it's not first and foremost in their mind. In their mind is get the load, get it delivered, get paid, go on to the next load. As soon as you put people into the mix, it becomes much more complicated. So we're looking now to identify those risk indicators that help us intervene, because the premise of our program is not to punish or cancel carriers, it's to intervene with carriers when they start to show risk, and that risk helps us, if we see the risk, in the example I just used about they started with 50 trucks and things started to pop on the record fairly quickly. Well, that usually will say to Lisa and her team, we have a lack of knowledge. We have a lack of knowledge and infrastructure, which means they don't have the supports in the business. You don't have a safety and compliance manager. You don't have somebody managing HR issues. You don't have somebody managing maintenance. Because when you have 50 trucks going in 50 different directions, you have 50 different issues you have to deal with every day. So that infrastructure has to be there. So that's how we start to look at carriers now more holistically and say, what are we dealing with? If we see a carrier who has historically been good start to suffer, start to have problems, then we're going to start to wonder what's happening. So usually we start to see things like the bottom line has dropped out. So they're not making as much money, so they're starting to cut back on training, maintenance, and those kind of things. So that's what we say when we talk about holistically looking at a carrier. We're looking at all those factors. So don't ever assume that if you go to Lisa's team and say, well, I've had 6 collisions, but they weren't at fault. If they're all the same type of collision, and they're really about defensive driving practices, Lisa's team is still going to want to talk to you about it, because that's a preventable collision, even if you weren't attributed as being primarily at fault. If you're following too closely, driving too quickly, over driving the conditions, that's still something the carrier should be aware of and should be engaging the company on.
Your core drivers, they become the voice of the company, right? They'll spread your good news. Okay, back to you, Bob. Hiring drivers is difficult, and we know 10th Street, it's a powerhouse in this sector. What recommendations do you have for fleets looking to hire drivers in this kind of difficult time we're having right now?
The shameful plug is start with using 10th Street. The rest of this is, I mentioned pieces of it earlier, so it comes back, but it's automation. You have to respond to those drivers. We capture drivers in that first 30 minutes of application. Make it easy for them, cut out all the interaction that's not necessary, do all the ease of use stuff right off the bat. Integrate with partners. Again, we have great integration and partnership with you guys and have for a while. Make everything smooth for those drivers. That's what we look for.
Shortage of drivers out there, if you will. You need to have tools in place that allow you to, hire faster, hire better, right? So having information centralized, whether it's, through your ATS applicant tracking system, providers like 10th Street having that information available in one location. I've heard horror stories from, insurers, some of them might even be in this room, where the risk management side of the team goes into, the office and they're, okay, we want to do a bit of an audit or look at your reports, and they're like, well, we got files maybe here, we got files maybe there, this information, we got maybe something you can look at that covers off, 20 or 30% of the drivers, or we're missing information. So, obviously, the wonderful thing about a computer is that, the storage that's in them is almost, you can always have information available at your fingertips.
There are opportunities to build ties with them. So I think let's go beyond butter chicken, samosas, Bollywood, Diwali lunches. There are a variety of cultures that can be explored. Think of a South Indian meal. Think of Goan music. I come from there. My state is Goa. We've got Portuguese background. The background is Portuguese. The music is different. Explore that. And please try and learn a little bit about cricket. It's very important. So I took the time and effort to learn baseball. If I know who's on deck, if I know what's a fly ball, go Jays, man. I love the Jays, right? So you could learn about long off, long on, a cover drive. It's not hard. I know you guys like beer. Try a Kingfisher. We do a good single malt too. Indri is a good one. Amrut. Try that. Why not? To my fellow first-gen immigrants here, why not try some different type of food? Why do you keep going to Indian food all the time? Try something different. Greek, Italian, it's all there. Try it out. I know you love cricket. Try baseball, basketball, football. Sports and food help start a conversation. Don't just stick to the weather. It gets boring, right? I don't have to tell you guys about, the beer you get here, the Canadian beer, the single malts. You guys have been exporting this for a long time and enjoying it too. On a serious note, after breaking the ice, talk about trucking. One connection at a time. Who knows? Things might get a little bit better.
All right, there you go. That was some of the tidbits that we saw over at the Canadian Transportation Summit. Well done, as always. To learn more about upcoming events, check out either pmtc.ca or transrep.ca for sure. Hey, did I tell you about Rosedale Transport? They're our featured sponsor of the month for November. And I got to tell you, we're probably one of the safest fleets around, always trying to improve. Been around for over 50 years. I've been working with the team for a decade at least, and They keep winning awards. They keep winning. They're some of the nicest people to work for. Family-owned company that's come up through the years to be over 800 employees, 15 terminals across North America, and stay quiet, if you will, on the marketing front, but always doing a good job. If you want to work for a company that's stable, one that has opportunities in local, regional, highway, and even owner-operators, then Rosedale Transport should be on your list, and rosedaleGroup.com is where you want to go to check all of that out. All right, go there, tell them that we sent you. All right, so that was a good event. I hope you enjoyed that. Hope you found some good opportunity out of that. If you want to see some video, go check out either transrep.ca, PMTC.ca, or you can visit our YouTube channel as well, because that's where it is. And before we go, let me tell you a little bit about Driver Check. Driver Check, of course, was one of the sponsors, and they do some awesome stuff. If you're looking for drug and alcohol testing, they have new technology out on how to book appointments. They have workplace safety information. If you've got issues with cannabis in the workplace, anything like that, they've got all the answers for you right there. Go to drivercheck.ca to learn all about that. Check out their new place they opened up last year in Ayr, Ontario. That's AYR, out by Cambridge, Kitchener. Okay, my friends, we will talk to you later. Be good. Subscribe wherever you are. See you at the next events. There's lots of stuff coming up. Again, check out our events calendar at the Lead Pedal Podcast to find out what's coming up for the future. We update that every month with you, so you know what's coming up, and we'll see you at the events. Bye for now, and we will talk to you later.
This has been another episode of the Lead Pedal Podcast. For more information or to subscribe to the podcast, visit theleadpedalpodcast.com, and be sure to follow the podcast on Facebook and Twitter.